evening. It is 7 p.m. on Wednesday, June 26th. We will call to order the regular meeting of the annual, regular meeting, as it's also the annual meeting of the Meridian Library District Board of Trustees. We'll begin with item number 2 on our agenda, public comment. Do we have anybody signed up for comment? Thank you, Aaron. Just as a reminder, we do limit the length of time for our public comments to 3 minutes, and under Idaho open meeting law, of course, the board cannot engage in discussion of items that are not on the agenda. Mr. Carter.
In quantity, but in quality. I have looked over board meetings and votes and actions and activity of the board over this last year. I've interfaced with library members or employees, if you will. I call them good helpers. My quality is thank you for what you do. Thank you for keeping the library going. Certainly I've had discussions about things, but I realized I didn't say thank you, as I believe it would be well and good to present to you, even in a public comment forum. It's wonderful to come to the library, to enjoy the time here, to get movies that make me think of Daniel Radcliffe, different other than Harry Potter. And so that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate that. We will move forward to item number 3 on our agenda, the consent agenda. As a reminder, consent agendas are considered routine, acted upon with one motion, and there is not a discussion on those items. Of course, if the board wishes to discuss a consent agenda item, we can remove it and add it as a regular agenda item. That said, we have 6 items in our agenda. Meeting minutes from May 15th, hours of operation for 2025, the holiday closure schedule for 2025, the regular meeting dates for the 24-25 year beginning in July, and then 2 policies, whistleblower and the History Center portion of the collection development policy. I'd entertain a motion.
And Chair, just
go ahead, Nick.
clarify, those will be removed as policies because they've been integrated elsewhere.
Thank you for that clarification. I would entertain a motion.
Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Josh.
Madam Chair, I move we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I second.
Thank you, Laura. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. That brings us to item number 4, our financial reports. We have in our packets a glorious 58 pages of financial reports. And our action items tonight are approval of the March financials and approval of the disbursements, which we would handle in a single motion.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead, Nick.
there was a typo. It's supposed to be the April, not March.
Thank you. It should be April financial reports, and of course they are marked as such in the packet. Thank you. Additional comments from staff or questions from the trustees?
Madam Chair, I have a question.
Go ahead, Laura.
When looking through the bills, I noticed that, first of all, thank you, Emma, for putting this all together. I did notice that there are we are charged different amounts for interlibrary loan based on who we interface with. Can I get an explanation of that? I'm just curious about why that is.
Yes, Madam Chair. Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Jason.
Trustee. It really is just depending on their cost. The cost is passed through from wherever the lending library is using media mail. So if we get a book from Missouri, it'll be a little more expensive than a book from Utah. Yeah.
Additional questions or comments?
Madam Chair,
Go ahead, Jeff.
I'm always curious about items. I don't know what they are for the Lingso systems and the Green Buffalo.
Lingzos is the sorter machine.
Okay.
And Green Buffalo, I'm going to have to defer to Emma on that one.
Green Buffalo is one of the business names for one of the presenters that came to the Children's Book Festival.
Thank you.
Additional questions?
I do have one more if that's
Go
okay.
ahead.
In the budget versus actuals, we had 108,000 set aside for consulting. Nothing has been spent yet. Do we anticipate much of that being spent this year?
That was set aside for the strategic plan primarily. And because that has been pushed to next fiscal year, pending approval with the budget upcoming in the next couple of months, that will be amended with the rest of our current fiscal year's amended budget. So no, we don't anticipate using any of that. However, it will be subject to amendment in April or August.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead, Josh.
I just wanted to point out that one of the things that caught my eye was the approximately $4,500 we spent to bring an author in for the Meridian Library Foundation's event, Meet the Author. I know that there were 3 authors here, and it looks like we only picked up the tab on one of them. I think that is money well spent, and events like that add a lot of prestige and opportunities for our constituents to have a kind of a once in a lifetime thing. So while it was expensive and over $4,000, I think it's money well spent.
And I would say that was our first time doing that event. It was a 2-part event, and it was very, very well received. And then the second part was also a fundraising piece that the foundation hosted, and to piggyback off of the first part. And so we made money in the end by the donations that the foundation has promised us from that event. So
Thank you. With no further questions, I would entertain a motion to approve the April financial reports and disbursements.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead,
I
Laura.
move that we approve the April financial reports and disbursement approvals.
Thank you.
Disbursements.
Second.
Thank you, Destiny. Further comment? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Brings us to item number 5 on our agenda, the board bylaws. These were some amendments to our bylaws included in our packets. Of course, an amendment was necessary to reflect the legislation changing library trustee terms from 6 years to 4, as well as some other updates, I guess is the right word, clarifications in the bylaws. Any comments or questions about those? They have been through legal review, of course. I would entertain a motion to approve the amended bylaws.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead, Destiny.
I move to amend or to approve the amended board bylaws.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Josh. Further comment? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. That brings us to item number 6 on our agenda, the election or selection of trustee officers. This is an annual business, annual meeting item we do every year. Our officers serve 1 term. I would like to make a motion to nominate Jeff Kohler as chair, Destiny Hart as vice chair, and Laura Knudsen as our treasurer.
Second.
Thank you, Josh.
and Madam Chair, just a point of order.
Thank you.
We only need to elect the chair and vice chair. The treasurer is appointed,
Appointed.
as per the bylaws that were passed a minute ago.
Yes, thank you for that clarification. However, it is an appointment by the board, not by the chair. So a single motion to elect the 2 officers and appoint the treasurer. Yes, seeing head nods. Yes. So I would amend my motion.
Still second.
Thank you, Josh. Any questions, additional nominations? Substitute motions? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations, Jeff. Congratulations, Destiny. Thank you, Laura, for your continued service. Per the bylaws, those will be in place beginning in July. So we shall carry on. with the exciting part of our agenda. Item number 7, the approval of resolution 2024-01, which is of course related to our Pinnacle branch certificates of participation. Nick, Adam?
All right.
All right.
We'll have these two present the.
Outstanding, thank you.
They're the
Yeah,
smart
hi,
ones.
Eric Herringer with Piper Sandler. We're your municipal advisor on the transaction. Adam Christensen's your bond attorney. He's the one with all the legal stuff. I'm the one with the numbers stuff. I do have a presentation. I don't know if it got loaded up, but I think you might have a paper copy. It looks like this on the cover. And before you, so as Adam will describe, there's official action to basically authorize the financing to complete, the acquisition of the Pinnacle Branch Library. We've been working on this for a long time. You probably don't need a whole lot of information to make that decision to approve that resolution. But I did, before you did, want to give you an update kind of where we're at. So a few things have changed since I was here in March. The first page in this document is to review what we kind of have as the major goals of the financing. We're going to, construction of the South Branch Library is expected to be completed by August of 2024. So we wanted to be in a position where we could finance and acquire, have the library acquire the facility as soon as it's done, as soon as you're ready to occupy. So the key there is we need to sync it up with what we're expecting is a conditional occupancy permit that we're thinking might be available by July 12th. So that's pretty good timing. We were thinking of financing maybe a little bit later in August, but when we found out that they were ahead of schedule, we ramped up the timing, and we're ready to get everything locked in at the end of July, and then close in August. The other good update we have is that the expected purchase price is quite a bit less than what we had talked about in March. The not to exceed, I believe, was $6,610,000, and the most recent update, which we got today, $5,840,000. This document reflects $5,796,000, but I wrote this document yesterday, and we got that update. So it's a little higher, about roughly $45,000 of contingency that's been used. And you'll see how the numbers look a little bit later in the document. One thing that hasn't changed is that we're sizing the financing so that you can to the 1.4 million annual lease payments to coincide with your plant levy. So the plant levy comes in, it's 1.4 million. It expires in 2029. That's what we have to pay back the lease. And so we're sizing the entire financing within that constraint. To the extent at the time there was a shortfall, and when we did this in March, if that could not afford the full purchase price, then the library would have to come up with equity, upfront money. Now that we have a lower purchase price, it's possible that the financing will generate more money than the purchase price, and any extra additional money would go towards furnitures, fixture, and equipment, things you were going to pay for out of cash that you now have the ability to finance. So that's how we're approaching the financing. I'll show you the numbers in a second. The next page, another big milestone is that we got the bond rating from Moody's. Nick and Emma did a great job talking to the rating analysts. I don't know if this has been communicated to you, but one of the rating analysts from Moody's grew up in Meridian and used to come to the library, and she was very complimentary about, and she was very emotional about her experience as a kid. And so it was a neat thing for her. I think it was a neat thing for us. I don't think it had any impact on our rating because it's not supposed to, but it was nice. I can tell you, you got a very good bond rating. It's the highest bond rating I thought we could get, which is basically the issuer rating. So what they're rating you as an issuer is AA2. Now that's the same rating that the Meridian, the West Ada School District gets, and that's a much bigger tax base than yours because it includes Eagle and Star, and they have a much bigger budget than you, and those things matter in terms of the rating. But you can see in the quotes I have there, their initial AA2 issuer rating reflects the district's robust financial position that will remain strong, supported by conservative budgeting, responsible fiscal practices with available fund balance, and net cash both exceeding 100% of operating revenues as of fiscal 2023. Now, some of those you've been building up because you have these capital projects, but they're very complementary of your financial position and financial management. Now, the COP, because it's subject to appropriation, gets one notch below that. So the actual rating on these certificates is going to be AA3. And that's what we thought was the best outcome we could get, and that's what you got. So congratulations on that. Somewhat a little bit bad news. Interest rates since March have come up, and that's what this chart on page 3 is showing. We've got a 5-year history going back the last 5 years of what the interest rate is on a 5-year municipal bond. Not your municipal bond, but just kind of a AAA generic municipal bond. And the rates we're going to be able to get are going to track, at least the trend you're seeing here. They spiked up at the end of May. Good news is they've come back down quite a bit over the course of June. But we are a little bit higher interest rate environment now than when I was here in March to give you an update. Thankfully, we have a lower purchase price. So if you go to the next slide, what's the bottom line? If you look at the right-hand side, the all-in true interest cost that we're anticipating if we were in the market right now would be about 4.13%. That is, by comparison to March, a fair amount higher. But you can see with the same par amount, what's really going to change as interest rates go up or down is how much premium is generated from the sale. If interest rates go up, you'll get less premium. If interest rates go down, you'll get more premium. And what is premium? Premium is the amount of money generated from the bond sale. You're going to have some costs. Net, we're showing that we're roughly about 6.2 million of proceeds after costs from the financing. That will allow for a purchase price that we're estimating. Again, that number's been updated from basically 5.8 million to 5,840,000. And instead of the 402,000 being available, 403,000 being available for FF&E, with that higher purchase price, that number drops to around 360,000. So that's what's going to move. It's just, we expect, unless rates go through the roof in the next month, that we should be able to generate the purchase price, and anything extra goes to FF&E. The rest of the stats look very similar to what they looked like in March, partly because the way we sell the bonds, the par amount and coupon stay the same as the yield. It's that premium that changes if rates go up or down. Let's see. Next slide is where we're at on the schedule, and we've updated this a little bit compared to what you saw in March. Tonight is the board meeting. This would be the last time you'll, see us in this capacity of working on this financing until it's closed, unless we don't price and have to delay. But I don't foresee that because you'll take official action, as Adam will describe, to authorize the financing. And then we'll move forward in July between the 8th and the 12th. That's when we'll finalize the preliminary official statement. That's the offering document, the disclosure document that investors will see. There's a fair amount of regulatory requirements where we go through a process to get that deemed final, make sure everything is correct and accurate, not missing anything. And then we'll post that document, offering document, in the market on July 15. And that will then allow the underwriter, Steeple, to market the bonds to investors. And then when we have about 9 days later, we'll price the bonds. That's when we set the interest rates. We've got that scheduled now for July 24th. That's when we'll know the final outcome. Rates will be set, final numbers all generated. Then that could all go into the legal documents. So those legal documents can get signed and recorded and all that stuff so that we can close on August 6th. So August 6th is the date you'd have the money from the bond sale to pay the acquisition price for the facility, and then whatever's left, having a fund to pay for the furniture, fixture, and equipment. Got it? Okay. Any questions? I don't think I need to go over the last page. It's just a list of who all's involved. Nothing's changed there. Holly Troxel is your bond counsel or your advisor. Stiefel is your underwriter. They're the ones that are going to go out and market and sell the bonds. And we're going to advise you throughout that process to make sure that the final interest rates are appropriate given market conditions, and that we're there in a fiduciary capacity to protect your interests and throughout the financing.
Questions from the trustees?
Chair.
Go ahead, Jeff.
I'm not sure this is a question for you, Eric, but so where does this essentially locks in the rest of our levy, but what about the Cherry Lane renovation? Is that money that we've already collected? Maybe that's a question or a question.
I can answer that one.
Please.
So the money that we have collected from the plant facility levy that has not been used currently for Orchard Park or Unbound will be used for the Cherry Lane renovation. And so we'll be using that money from the plant facility levy that we have. And then we'll also be using the repair and replacement fund that we have, both of which are in our LGIP accounts. And so those are the two funding sources for the Cherry Lane renovation, and they each have their own stipulations. So when we go to do the design, we'll have to split out the cost between those two buckets from a design allocation standpoint for where that cost goes for either repair and replacement or for new construction type things. But essentially those two buckets set the budget for the Cherry Lane remodel.
So Nick, to follow up on that, so on our balance, our statement of financial position, that's the plant levy is the capital project fund, is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah, so approximately 4 million on
Correct.
hand will not go towards the financing. It's the money yet to come in,
Correct.
and then the 6 million in the
Yep.
repair-
So
repair.
so Pinnacle will be all the future years, and then Cherry Lane will be what we currently have on hand.
Right.
So that will allow us to move forward more expediently with Cherry Lane remodel, which we all know we need to move on as quickly as possible to save the
Don't say it
HVAC.
out loud.
So it's not-
Thank you.
But
And to that end, we'll hold some of that 6 million for other equipment. Yes.
correct. We'll when we present it next month, we'll show some of that. But essentially, we would maintain a balance between 500,000 and $1 million in the repair and replacement fund, so as not to completely zero that out at any one time.
Thank you. I do have a question for you, Eric.
Yep.
So thinking in a simple way about interest rate risk, so between now and July 24th, if interest rates go up, is there a relationship between dollars and points, right? So every quarter point costs us $10,000 or something like that. Is that?
Yeah, if I was smart, I would have, or if I was prepared and smart, I would have, I could have run that calculation, because you can kind of like, you can look at the total proceeds generated in the March analysis, 6,315,000 versus the 6.2 now. So that's roughly $300,000 difference
Mm-hmm.
with a change of 65 basis points.
Gotcha.
So we could do the, I don't do math while I'm standing up in my head. So
I
have
don't
to
do
sit
math
down and
without
do
a calculator, but that
Well,
gets
yeah,
me what I'm
we could
after.
we could
right?
extrapolate that and
Yeah.
tell you a little bit what that move. So yeah, I mean, if rates move to quarter point, you're probably looking at $50,000.
Thank you.
Rough numbers. Right?
Yeah, That's
Real
what I
rough.
was after. Thank you. We will hope for the best. Go ahead, Laura.
Madam Chair, this is probably a question for Nick, but I know that we approved the purchase price not to exceed. So we have a purchase price that's lower than what we're expecting. What contributed to that?
A lot of that is Brighton and CM being very diligent in being able to build everything out. We had better than expected weather, and so we didn't have to dip into the contingency funds, and everything has moved along smoothly. So that we had a cushion built in to allow for anything unforeseen, and so far knock on wood, it's gone exceedingly well.
Sorry. The way I recollect it is there was contingency on contingency. I mean, things have gone very well, but also there was a fair amount of cushion in that original agreement. No, because yeah, that's a different story.
That, yeah, I would not take what we learned from this project to carry over to Cherry Lane. Building from scratch versus opening up 30-year-old walls. The unforeseen is a lot bigger here.
Yeah, and we still have a couple weeks to go, so hopefully nothing goes terribly wrong. Thank you, Eric. Appreciate
Yeah.
it.
Good evening,
Adam. Good to see
trustees.
ya.
Good to see everyone again. So before the board tonight, as you know, is resolution 2024-01, which I'll refer to as the certificates resolution for shorthand. The certificates resolution, what it does is it approves and authorizes the issuance and provides for the sale of the district's annual appropriation certificates of participation, or COPs, as we call them, in the principal amount of up to $6.5 million. Just a side note on that, and Eric's probably will be able to explain this better to the extent you need him to. That is a maximum. You'll note that it's not the same number that Eric ran or had, which was $6,050,000. What that number does, and the reason it's $6.5 million, is to give the financial folks basically maximum flexibility on the day of pricing to structure the financing in the most advantageous way possible. So I don't think we have a realistic expectation that it's going to be $6.5 million as principal amount. But if that's the principal amount that gets you the best deal or the lowest total overall cost, then it may be. And so that's why that number is a little different. As you're aware, right, the purpose of the COPs is to purchase the Pinnacle branch, the real and personal property associated with the Pinnacle branch. You previously approved, and the district entered into a purchase and sale agreement with Brighton to do that. That obviously has certain terms, and that sale is going to close at the same time as the financing closes. So same day, basically simultaneous closing. So that August 6th date, assuming it holds, is the date that you will both finance and essentially get the keys to Pinnacle branch. So as Eric mentioned, adoption of the certificates resolution is the primary COP financing approval action by the board. This is the time we're going to be in front of you. This is the time where you will actually approve the financing. That's tonight by adoption of this resolution. So along with the resolution, you've been provided with a whole number of documents, some of which are very long, and I appreciate that. Those are substantially final documents. They're the key financing documents. Those include the primary lease, the annual appropriation lease agreement, the trust indenture, annual appropriation, the preliminary official statement, which Eric mentioned, and is essentially the prospectus to the market, the continuing disclosure undertaking, the certificate purchase agreement, are all the documents that were in your packet. I'm happy to provide brief summaries of each of those documents if you'd like, or answer questions on those. I know it's a lot. The key document in there in a lot of ways is the preliminary official statement, because it summarizes all of the other documents. I note that all of those documents as presented to the board are substantially final drafts. So additional minor edits may be made following board approval. The resolution allows for that post-adoption with delegated officer approval, and you'll see that delegated officer concept in the resolution. The delegated officers, as indicated in there, are Jeff Kohler, your newly elected board chair, and then Nick Grove, of course, library director and district clerk. So essentially what happens at this point is we can't make major substantive changes to those documents, but there's certain blanks in there that we don't know right now. There may be typos. There may be certain things we find that we can change after the meeting tonight without having to come back to you and say, do you approve, adding a period at the end of the sentence. The resolution itself does a number of things. First, it approves those documents that we just talked about. Second, it authorizes certain actions preliminary to the sale of the COPs, including most notably, as Eric indicated, deeming final the preliminary official statement. That is an SEC rule. SEC Rule 15C212 requires that official action be taken by the board to deem final that document before it goes to the market. So the resolution does that. And there'll be a separate sort of deem final certificate the delegated officers will execute right before we actually go into the market to indicate, yes, we approve any, subsequent changes that have been made between tonight and a couple weeks from now, which will probably include filling in a few blanks on certificate of occupancy once we have that information and sale date and things. The third thing it does is it delegates to those delegated officers the power to make certain determinations within parameters as set by the board and set forth in the resolution on the date of sale. So that's the date of pricing. So there's certain things that will happen on the day of pricing that need to be approved, principally related to the structure, the financing structure and the numbers that we grant authority to the delegated officers to approve on that day, so that we don't have to have essentially a special board meeting within the hours of 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. because we have to approve the pricing that day. And essentially the morning is taken by the pricing itself. So those are things like the rates of interest on the certificates, the amount of the certificates with that not to exceed figure here, 6.5 million. The principal amount or the payments on the certificates due each year, right? So here we've capped that at that 1.4 million to coincide with your plant levy. So there's nothing, Jeff and Nick can't go in pricing and say, we're going to pay 1.5 million a year because we think it's better. You can only go up to 1.4 million based on the parameters set in here. And of course, we've talked about where that number comes from. The redemption provisions here, I don't anticipate there will be any redemption provisions other than you're going to make payments for 5 years and it's going to be done. The final maturity date of the certificates, we've set it so it can't go past basically the end of the plant levy, right? So we've timed all this to coincide with the plant levy funds that are coming in and the timing of those funds over the next 5 years. And then the price at which the certificates will be sold, which includes Eric's point premium, more likely. So again, that overall financing structure, which Eric's going to help to make sure it's the best deal for you, those are essentially parameters within what you've granted here that Jeff and Nick can approve on the day of pricing. The final thing that the resolution does is it basically authorizes all further actions that are necessary or reasonably required to carry out and close the transaction, right? There's going to be a whole number of closing documents, various certificates and things essentially that set forth all of the information from the pricing that will need to be signed prior to close. It essentially delegates to those folks the ability to do that, and to you all as well. All officers and employees of the district can march forward and get this done. That's basically what it says. So are there any questions on the resolution, all of those documents, or anything that I've just run through? I know it's a lot.
Go ahead, Josh.
Answer. I just have one question pertaining to the role of the trustees, Zions Bank Corporation. In the event they have liquidation issues or things hit the fan over there, thinking like the Bay Area banks that had issues, however unlikely it may be, is the district protected from notes being called or loss of equity position or things if
Yes.
the trustee has issues?
Yes. So I guess twofold answer. One is they're not going to be holding any of your money, right? So that money is going to come in on the day of close and it's going to go right back out essentially to purchase the property. So they're not going to be sitting on millions of dollars of your money. Their principal role in this, given the structure of the transaction, because we're purchasing a completed property, we don't have basically a drawdown construction type structure, is to take the lease payments that you make and pass them on to the COP holders, to the folks, to the investors who purchased your certificates. You have the ability under the trust indenture to replace Zions. If you choose to do that, there are certain restrictions on who you can replace them with. It has to be basically a big, lots of infrastructure, lots of money. And there's only a handful of them, frankly, that are out there. But yes, if Zions runs into issues, you'll be fine. And they are a slightly different entity than Zion's itself as well, the corporate trust entity.
Additional questions? So the form of our motion is just straightforward to approve.
Approve
adopt the resolution.
You'll approve the resolution. The resolution itself approves the substantially final forms of the document. So it's just the resolution that needs to be approved.
If there are no additional questions or comments, I would entertain a motion to adopt resolution 2024-01 as written.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead, John.
I move that we approve Meridian Free Library District Resolution number 2024-01 as presented.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Destiny. Further comment? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. That brings us to item number 8, our Pinnacle branch transition. Nick?
Thank you. And thank you to Adam and Eric. They have been rock stars in guiding us through this. I usually ask 1,000 questions and they are always prepared. So thank you to both of you. We are very excited to be moving forward with Pinnacle as fast as we are. Things are moving much faster than we had anticipated this time last year. So we broke ground on October 19th of last year. And with the purchase and sale agreement with Brighton, we had no later than September 30th as the delivery date. We had been targeting a delivery date of mid to late August. They are going to be ready for temporary occupancy and whatnot second week of July. And then as Adam and Eric talked about, we'll be doing the actual purchase and sale finalization and all that on August 6th. So with that, we are looking at when do we close operations at Silverstone and when do we open operations at Pinnacle. So tonight I don't have anything for you to act on, but I just wanted to give you an update as to what we're thinking. And once we get to the July meeting, we'll have final action pieces for you to take action on ceasing operations at Silverstone and opening operations at Pinnacle. But what we're looking at is stretching our services at Silverstone as long as possible. And so taking that all the way through the end of August, with August 31st, a Saturday being our last day. And then staff love this. We are targeting opening Pinnacle on September 10th. And the reason that we are pushing to go that aggressive on the opening date is because it is the official 100-year celebration anniversary of political library. I saw the word on my screen of public library services in Meridian. So in September 10th, 1924, first library services in Meridian were at Songer Pharmacy. And so we are hoping that we can make that work to open up on September 10th in true commemoration of our centennial. So that's what we're shooting for. I will have turned the pencil idea into pen come July. So it's only 3 weeks away, but we feel confident we should have a solid plan in place. We might be asking for some of your help on September 3rd and 4th when we're doing some of the boxing up and unboxing of materials. But as we get closer and we have a fully detailed project management plan, we'll share that. So team, am I missing anything big from the discussion other than stressing Jenny out with how we have to move a collection of 20 some thousand items from one building to another in a day and a half?
Thank you, Nick. No questions, really. I mean, very fond of Jenny. Let's not send her over the edge. It would be wonderful. A very nice symbolic day on September 10th. But I think even if it's not September 10th, it is well ahead of schedule. It's under budget. It is beautiful. I got the opportunity to tour the building with the foundation a week or so ago. First time I had seen it from the inside. Really something for us to be proud of. So I think if it doesn't happen on September 10th, it's still a fantastic win for the district. So very excited.
Regardless of the date in September that we open, we will have started the project less than a year from opening. So I think that is a fantastic thing for us. And it looks beautiful. It's going to be a great addition out there. So we're excited.
Other questions, comments? All right. Yeah, well, there's a lot to be excited about there, and appreciate all the team making it happen. That brings us to item number 9 on our agenda, the director's monthly report.
All right. Thank you. We'll kind of just roll right in to some of our updates. I like to show every month, like I say, the different parts of different departments throughout the district. So HR still being busy, reviewed 48, had 1 job posting, 10 interviews, 3 separations, and then no job offers or position changes. In May, the biggest thing here was getting the junior librarian position hired. We now have 2 junior librarians. It's great that they're on board and ready to go. They've spent a few weeks in a couple of different departments, I believe, and they'll be cycling through various departments and working on different projects to learn all aspects of the library. Foundation was at our summer reading kickoff, and they raised $1,000 there, and then they also raised money during Idaho Gives, and the money raised at Idaho Gives will go to the teen space at Pinnacle and for the installation of some of the electronics there. And then the $1,000 that they got from the summer reading program will go towards the $50,000 that they pledged for children's materials. Looking at our collection, added over 3,000 items. We did 250. The number of checkouts, close to 100,000, and checking in, 65,000. Nice to see that we have 573 cards created. One of the things that's not shown on here, but is in Jason's board report, is that we have crested 200,000 physical items, which 200,000 physical items is quite a bit of things to manage, and I'm pretty excited that we've formally crested that, and we'll be above that going forward. So computer usage is maintaining its steady use. If you ever pop into one of the branches, there's usually a handful of people, sometimes waiting lines for computer usage, and then also we see strong traffic on our wireless networks as well. Summer reading kickoff was last month, and it had a lot of people, and it was very, very busy, and they had some great food trucks as well. So I was very excited to see how many people showed up at Settlers Park for that event. One of the things that I love seeing that we've brought back this year is our teen volunteers for the summer reading program. And we have those set up at Cherry Lane, Orchard Park, and Silverstone. And it gives opportunities for teens to get involved with the library and also take some of the administrative burden of doing the summer reading program for our patrons off of staff. And so it's a win-win for everybody involved. It's also how I got started in libraries a long time ago. And I think it's an important thing that we continue to find ways to use and provide access to. The Silverstone team attended some of the school carnivals as school was closing in May and had over 300 interactions. Orchard Park celebrated several events, Star Wars Day on May 4th, and then they did the Girls on the Run 5K over at Kleiner Park, which is a collaboration event. And then they were also able to celebrate their 1-year anniversary from when we were all out there and did the ribbon cutting and opening of Orchard Park. And then the Unbound team hosted a teenpreneur business startup event that brought in, I think it was 6 kids, and helped them get started on being understanding how to start a business and get involved with everything they need to know from the beginning to end of launching their own initiatives. So lots of programs. We had 193 programs with almost 7,000 people. So those are ramped up. I'm really excited to see the numbers from June because summer is always our busiest program season. So it'll be fun to see those numbers. But across the board, our numbers are looking really great for programs. And finishing up with some pictures. And the top right one is, of course, Pinnacle. And that is looking at it from the southeast corner looking northwest. So I think someone confirm? Okay. So really excited. If you haven't been out there, even driving by, it looks quite great on the corner of Locust Grove and Lake Hazel, and the cross streets behind it are phenomenal and aspirational. I think. Thanks, Jason. So yeah, just trying to keep it kind of quick since I know we have a lot of things, but happy to answer any questions from what I presented or from the board reports that we provided.
Thank you, Nick. Questions, comments from the trustees?
Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Laura.
Not a question, but a comment, and just really praise for the programs that we continue to provide, and our employees are amazing, and how they support our community. I would love to see it. I am excited for some future partnerships where we could get maybe more kids out to something like the Unbound Teenpreneur. So there's some good opportunities there. So thank you.
I'd like to point out a couple of things that were in Jason and Vasil's reports as well with the grants. So Orchard Park received a $5,000 grant for some STEAM lab manipulatives, and the Strategic Initiatives Department, in conjunction with the Idaho Department of Corrections, got a $10,000 grant to help inmates with reentry. And so those are 2 big grants that we were awarded and some initiatives that I'm excited to see move forward.
Thank you, Nick, for pointing that out. Yeah, I agree with Laura. The programs, particularly for teens, the junior librarian, the teen volunteers for summer reading, the teenpreneur program. I mean, just really exciting stuff. And I was particularly excited to read about the AL grant with the Department of Corrections, just one of 16 libraries across the nation. And I had the opportunity to visit the facility for some volunteer training for a different program, and the gentleman that does the volunteer orientation and training just talked about how important those programs are for the residents coming out and doing reentry, needing those just fundamental life skills, needing those community connections are so important for their success and to reduce recidivism. And they have a great many folks tending to the spiritual needs of folks out there, but maybe not as much with the kind of basic life skills and job skills and those kinds of handling technology and forming those connections in the community. So I'm just really, really proud that the library is taking a role on there. Okay. Other questions, comments? All right. We will move forward then to item number 10 on our agenda. We have 2 job descriptions before us. We'll take them as separate actions. First is the library director job description included in our packet, relatively minor modifications there. Questions, comments? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the library director job description. Oh,
Sorry.
go ahead, Laura.
I'm looking on page 3, and in the job description, it talks about in lines 22 through 24, experience, the addition of increasing levels of responsibility. The addition is in a public library. Can you give some rationale behind that? I think a public library experience is really important, but it might not. I'm worried about we're losing MLS librarians all the time. Like, that is not a growing industry. Career
Yes.
field.
The addition of that, we can strike it if you'd like, but the level of information that you need just as a foundation is really different in a public library versus an academic library or a school library. And so to me, that is a really big piece to understand how all of the priorities come together, how the philosophy is different. They have a lot of shared pieces, even coming from an outside agency, having library experience. Libraries work just a little bit different than everybody else. And so I think it's important to have that at the top level.
I don't want to strike it. I just wanted to know.
Oh, okay.
Thanks.
Additional questions, or I would entertain a motion.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead, Laura.
I move that we approve the library director job description.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Destiny. Further comment? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Brings us to item 10B, the trustee job description. We have this included in our packets as well, and of course is important to have the trustee job description for our trustees to understand our role, have that delineated from and delineated, I think, from the role of the director, and understand the full scope of our responsibilities. Additional comments here, Nick?
The only changes I made were formatting. So
It did look familiar. Any questions, or I would entertain a motion?
Madam Chair,
Go ahead, Destiny.
I move that we approve the trustee job description.
Thank you.
I second.
Thank you, Laura. Further comment? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. That brings us to item number 11 on our agenda, the collection development policy. Like all of our policies, or all of our policies come before us roughly annually for review. But of course, with the implementation of House Bill 710 on July 1st, we did need to make some updates to our collection development policy to comply with the requirements of that bill. We had our subcommittee review this bill and work with the director. It has undergone legal review and kind of some extensive work here. Hopefully the trustees have had the opportunity to review it carefully. Comments?
This is a substantial revision due to the passage of HB 710 and working, I would even say working closely with, being very closely working with our legal counsel on this to give context of what we were looking at. And then they drafted this, and then we've worked through a few revisions of it over the last month or two. It is not just, it's not the same as any other policy in the fact that it does a really, really good job of pointing out source references for different pieces, being very clear in clarifying terminology and where that comes from, and being in accordance with what we have to have with the HB 710 and also with best practices from what we have seen and found others to be doing, and our interpretation of the legal setting with which this is as a backdrop. So
Go ahead, Josh.
Madam Chair, I think as I read through the policy, it was very clear and fantastic legalese. I would just submit that on page 9, the item III. Honestly, I think that in light of the legal requirements that we have, I think that entire section should be stricken from the policy. And in particular, I will say that item B about the board giving the library director's written response and recommended decision substantial deference. That is, I think, could paint the board as a rubber stamp when it is not. And it is obvious that the board will listen to the director's inputs and weigh that appropriately without having the burden of this statement being on there. We will obviously defer to library director inputs and give it substantial weight, but I think the entire section, especially in light of the previous section II about, hey, if we don't respond within 60 days, then boom, it's denied. I think that already is spelled out. So while it's cumbersome, I think it gives a very clear flow chart of how requests are to be handled and keeps us, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, Nick, but in legal counsel, if we were to strike that III section from this policy, it doesn't change anything substantially. Is that a true statement?
give me a second, please.
I mean, anytime I see a shall endeavor to, that is very unclear. And it is, it goes without saying. If we have a legal responsibility to respond within 60 days or, boom, we're going to do that, period. It's not, we're going to try really hard. We're going to do that.
Thank you, Josh. While Adam contemplates that element of it there, I think the notion that the board shall give the library's director's written response and recommended decision substantial deference, I think that provides some guidance for a future board. We have seen in other libraries a less collaborative relationship between the board and the director and a much more, for lack of a better word, hostile one. So I think including that in the policy provides guidance to trustees about what goes into their decision and at least provides, I mean, the board's going to do what they're going to do, but I think, at least provides some guidance, guardrail intent that the professional opinion of the director should be an important consideration when maybe there's a less respectful relationship between the trustees and the board, or between the trustees and the director, which could happen. We've seen it.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead, Destiny.
my thought behind the value of that section, the III section, is that while the section above says that, notes that if we don't issue a decision within 60 days, it should be considered denied. The section below says that we will make an effort to do that, because one of several things could happen. We could just not make an effort at all, and then it would be denied for lack of trying. And I think that doesn't promote trust from library patrons. And so I think that this lends some clarity to if we were not to issue a decision in that 60-day time frame, it would not be for lack of an effort, because it's conceivable that we could get so many at once that it is impossible to meet that 60-day deadline. So this at least spells out, I think, that we are to make that effort.
Madam Chair, I'd like to
Go ahead, Nick.
add, because of the timelines that we have here, one of the consequences of a challenge is going to be that more likely than not, we will end up having to buy additional copies of whatever is challenged so that we have enough for the people within the review process to read and go through the material. And at which point, if it's deemed to stay in the collection, then those items would go into the collection. So conceivably, we would have 4 or 5 additional copies of an item that is challenged if it were to stay in the collection. So just wanted to point that out from a timeline standpoint of what is going to have to happen if something is challenged and we need access to it to review it. The only way we can review it is to have access to it. So.
If you wouldn't mind to the mic. Thank you, Adam.
Okay. So I guess first I would say I appreciate Trustee Hart's comments, and frankly, those were some of the issues that we were contemplating, particularly the essentially the inability to respond to potentially a flood of requests within the mandatory timeframe, which is what those 2 sections are intended to address. I will note under HB 710, a written decision is not required. So you have 60 days from the date of the request to remove the material to an adults only section before a cause of action can be taken. So it's a trigger for the ability to file a cause of action or a lawsuit against the district to have that material removed. So the thought process here is, to the extent we can, obviously we want to do that in writing. We want to state our justifications, and we want to have that writing to rely on down the road should that same material be challenged again. So we have basically a clear record of what the board found when it made its determination before. But, to a certain extent, right, that is, I can't think of the word I want to use, but it's a goal, right? Because it may not, at least conceivably, right, hypothetically, it may not be possible to do so. So, if in that event, right, we just can't get to everything, we can't issue a written decision on everything. If no decision's issued, right, Romanet 2, which is how we refer to it in our legalese, just II. If there's no decision issued, it's denied. But to Trustee Hart's point, right, the goal, the board will endeavor to issue a written decision within that 60-day time period. And obviously there are the subsections. To the extent there is a desire to take that out, I don't think it necessarily, it doesn't eviscerate the policy. It doesn't do anything, change anything that would make it not compliant with HB 710. But there is still that question of, do you still want the library director to submit a written response, or at least endeavor to submit a written response, right, within 28 days. So you have that to contemplate as you're making your decision. So not necessarily, this is process that's not necessarily fully mandated by HB 710 in the sense of the written decision and the timelines and things, but that 60-day period obviously is a key part of that statute.
Thank
Any
you.
questions on that?
Questions? Go ahead, Jeff.
Madam Chair, I have a couple of logistical questions. So if a patron is not, okay, let's say the patron is filing a request for the Children's School and Library Protection Act, do they fill out Section 1 and Section 2, or just Section 2? That's my first question.
They have to fill out both Section 1 and Section 2.
Okay.
If they're
it's
just
a regular
wanting
request.
a request for reconsideration without the HB 710
Okay.
language. It's just section 1.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And then the other question is that we're going to post these requests on our webpage, make them accessible to people. I'm assuming we'll do standard redaction of personal information.
Whatever is legally required to redact, we will redact. Other than that, it will be posted. We have a template that we're working on, and we'll have it ready to go by Monday. That will be a new landing page for the request for reconsideration that links out to the policy, the form itself, and then any challenge materials will be listed, and you'll see the request and the requester.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I've seen a lot of different versions in different libraries around the country, so that answers my question. Thank you.
And that C6 that talks about the case file will be publicly available via the website. District will evaluate whether any reductions to personal information are required by Idaho law. So yeah, it's a lot. There's a lot. So additional questions?
Madam Chair,
Go ahead, Laura.
not so much a question as a comment, but on page, to find it again, 15 and on page 18, by signing the section of this form, the period at the very end of that should probably go outside the end bracket. It's just me, sorry, English teacher. No points off, just a comment.
We can do that.
Okay.
That's it? That's it? Okay. Thank you. Further comment? Questions?
I'm making that change as we speak so that we'll be ready. And just, I guess maybe a few things here. So for staff, this won't change anything from the staff side. If someone brings it in, a filled out or to request one, they can pick up a paper one, they can print it off from our website. If staff receive it, then they will take it there, but they don't have a process within reviewing it other than to make sure that it has been received and it comes to the review team, and people are able to submit it via the email address that we have in the policy. And so I know staff might be watching, and we're going to talk to staff about this, but this is no different than how we've done the request for reconsideration form in the past from a in-person experience. Peace.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Just a comment and a question. I appreciate, in absence of a really well-written and thorough piece of legislation, I think that this policy does a really, really good job of adding context and outlining the process in a way that is going to be accessible and understandable to Meridian Library patrons. And it also appears to have taken a lot of work and a lot of time. So my question for you, Nick, is what would you estimate the time, as the time that it took to craft this enormous policy as a result of the legislation going into effect on July 1st? And what would you say is the monetary cost of that time to Meridian taxpayers?
Complicated question that I will do my best to answer. First, I would say I didn't craft it. This was largely Adam and his team. I went through and made him question his sanity by asking 1,000 questions, but my portion of drafting it was fairly minimal. However, I would say I can pull up a little bit of context, I'm sure, here in a second, but personally, I've spent, I could probably pull it up. I don't know if, oh, Emma's not here. Somewhere in the ballpark of like 20 hours personally on HB 710 since it passed. That's nothing before it passed. Collectively, we've spent a much bigger amount of time on that, obviously. The cost is multiple thousands of dollars of staff time and legal costs combined to be able to get to where we are tonight. I can get you a solid number, but it'll take me a few minutes.
Thank you, Nick.
Seeing no additional questions, I would make a motion to approve the collection development policy as written with the minor adjustment to the period noted by trustee Knudsen.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead.
I move that we approve the collection development policy.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Destiny. Additional comment? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oppose. Motion carries. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to Adam, to staff for the work done on this. We move bravely into the future. This brings us to item number 12, executive session. Pursuant to Idaho Code 74206-1B. I would move that the board go into executive session. And we will roll call in. Josh?
Yes.
Destiny?
Yes.
Laura?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
And I'm Megan. Yes. It is 8:11. We are in executive session. Alrighty, it is 9:29 and we are out of executive session. That brings us to item number 13 on our agenda, future agenda items. Anything from the board for consideration at a future agenda? We will, of course, talk additionally about Pinnacle. Go ahead, Nick.
We are looking at the code of conduct policy as directed by the board to bring out of schedule to come back early. So that will be ready for the July meeting, hopefully. I'll confirm with the team, but we have been working on it. And then we'll also be seeing the budget next month as well. So
Yeah,
those are the two big ones that are on my radar, along with our routine stuff.
great. Thank you. Yeah. I look forward to that. We'll have a draft budget, and then August we'll have public hearing and so forth. So, any other things?
Madam Chair,
Go ahead, Laura.
in probably about 3 months, I'd love to have an update about just the status of HB 710 and how that's impacted our library and then other libraries across the state.
Madam Chair, so that would be like September or October. October after the new fiscal year starts and after ILA and after Pinnacle's open. So that I'll put that on. We'll mark that down for October to give an update on that.
And
then-
ILA might provide the opportunity for just kind of some informal discussion with the staff about what's happening in their locations and so forth. So,
Madam Chair.
yes.
Also, I was going to do it in my director's update, but I wanted to say it now, even though late in our meeting, but I wanted to say thank you to you for your guidance and mentorship and everything that you brought. Being the chair of this board, I would not be able to have made it through my first 2 years without the Meridian Woman of the Year library mover and shaker that you are. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. All right. Hearing nothing further, it is 9:32 and we are adjourned.